You don't have to touch your stock portfolio. Move some of the bond portfolio into the income annuity. Your portfolios will do better. Your clients will be happier and they'll likely live longer. I believe in this stuff and it's done very well for me, and I'm living the dream right now.
Welcome to Beyond the IMO, where financial industry leaders will challenge your perspective and offer strategies to help you thrive in your independence. Here's your host, Justin Woodbury.
Annuities have been around in various forms for centuries, and over the past few decades, they've evolved significantly in modern-day retirement planning. But like any financial tool, annuities exist in an industry where incentives matter, and as a result, there's been retirees placed into products that were not appropriate for their situation. That reality is something that cannot be ignored. I've been involved in this industry for going on 17 years, and I've certainly seen compensation structures create pressure that influenced product selection. And this is at every level, from the IMO to the wholesaler to the advisor. I've also seen cases where an advisor's business model restricts the tools available to them, which may shape the recommendation a client receives. But I can honestly say that what I've seen way more of are good advisors wanting the absolute best for their clients, doing the research, and choosing the best path for that client. Sometimes that path included annuities, other times it didn't. And that brings us to the real question: do annuities belong in modern-day retirement planning? You're listening to Beyond the IMO, and joining me today are four respected voices with strong and differing perspectives on that question. Tom Hegna is an author, speaker, and economist who has been incredibly popular in this industry for many years. He's published 5 books, his latest being Don't Worry, Retire Happy, which is based on his popular TV show that's played in over 80 million homes across the US and Canada. He's an expert in this industry, and he specializes in creating simple and powerful retirement solutions based on math and science, not opinions. Sheryl Moore is the president and CEO of Moore Market Intelligence. She's also the creator of several competitive intelligent resources, including Wink's Annuity Specs, that I believe should be in every advisor's tool bag. She's also the author of the popular books Why I Bought Indexed Annuities and Why I Bought Fixed Annuities. Sheryl's known in this industry as the most connected person in life insurance and annuities. Philip Olsen is the co-founder of Solstice Wealth, a fee-only firm based out of Austin, Texas. Philip's a certified financial planner, and he's also the co-founder of the Emmy Award-winning TV show 2 Cents that's produced on PBS. Their YouTube channel has over 800,000 subscribers, and several of their videos have more than 3 million views. And Alli, Hershey, a certified financial planner from Philadelphia who works with a group called Fruitful, which is a CFP-led financial membership platform that focuses on automating personal finances. Alli started her career working with high net worth clients, but then left to transition and focus on wealth builders as opposed to wealth accumulators. 4 perspectives answering one question: do annuities belong in modern-day retirement planning? Let's begin. Philip and Alli, I really want to start with you guys, and then Tom and Sheryl, I'll bring you in right after. But you're both CFPs and fee-only advisors, and you said that your goal is to remain unbiased and achieve good client outcomes, which I love. From that framework, what concerns you the most about the role that annuities play in retirement planning?
I guess one of the concerns is that the situations where I've seen clients who have annuities in their retirement makeup typically just sort of baffling. How did this ever happen? How did the person have this product? How do they understand what they have so little and it's so different from what they expected, when there would be so many better obvious alternatives to what they were trying to do? And my concern, I guess, is the answer I generally come back to is there's not an even playing commission incentive when it comes to broker-dealer based advisors recommending products. I used to be a broker-dealer based advisor myself. I received commissions on annuities and I recommended them, as well as all those sort of products. They are not equal. There are different amounts. Mm-hmm. And they do end up swaying recommendations, I believe. I mean, that's what they're designed to do. So that's my concern is folks are coming to an advisor, a planner, hoping to get relatively as unbiased advice as possible on the products when there are natural kind of moving forces behind the scenes that can land folks in products that I just don't think they'd be in if those commissions weren't in place.
Alli, would you add to that? I know your demographics slightly different.
Yeah.
You're working with wealth builders, but would you add to that?
I mean, I think that he shares pretty much a commonality in just the general RIA space. So I think that's how a lot of us feel generally. But just from another perspective, I think that one of the things I like to point out to a lot of people is that an annuity is a tool and it's not a solution. And so when it's sold as a solution, that is where I get very protective of my people, right? Those are the people coming to me for help, and it's not necessarily what's sold to them as a solution. And
Sure, that makes sense. Sheryl, would you agree with that annuities are a tool and not a solution? I feel like we've talked before and that you would generally agree with that. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, usually I like to reinforce that belief when people are saying this annuity is bad or annuities in general are bad. And I'm like, just because some serial killer uses a hammer to murder someone doesn't mean we need to outlaw hammers,
Yeah.
So absolutely, it's just a tool.
Can you speak to the commission, or Tom, jump in to the commission part of that?
I'll throw a comment in here, Tom, before you. I actually did a study where I compared fee-based annuities to commission-based annuities on an apples to apples basis. And what that research showed was that partly through year 4 or 5, the commissionable product ends up being a better deal for the client just because an A fee is, in perpetuity and the commission is paid one time on an annuity. So, when you consider the differential in rates on the products, that certainly makes a difference. But with this research, we found that if you're talking about paying the least, the commissionable product is more consumer friendly in that regard.
I would add, I don't even know why compensation ever comes into it. It shouldn't. Nobody should be writing any product for the compensation. But just like they're saying that annuity people are incented to get that commission, I would say the RIA advisor, the fees are way more, the forever fees are way more than a one-time commission paid by the insurance company. That commission does not come out of the client's cash value. The insurance company pays it. Now, certainly the product is priced for that, but I've seen a lot of RIAs refuse to write annuities because they didn't want to lose assets under management. So they have a conflict of interest as well.
To be clear, I can write annuities under an A model if I thought that was the best thing for the client. My compensation would not change. So if I'm making more or less for a product sale, I think that could influence my recommendation. If I put a client in a CD, an annuity, stocks, ETFs, anything else, same fee to me. So I don't personally have an incentive. I think most family RAs don't. I'm not able to use that product. The commission, the sales incentives, to Tom's point, if they don't enter into the conversation, I think that's problematic. They should. If you have a different comp for recommending, for example, when I was in the BD land at 2 different broker dealers, this is how we were trained to sell these, Ameritas and MetLife, is, you could potentially put investment money into a variable annuity or a mutual fund. You could potentially put money into a fixed income annuity or a bond product. These were kind of comparable options. And I'm being heavily incentivized, at least we could say front end, to do one versus the other. And that is what sales incentives are for. These are not meant to be ignored. The annuity companies are not naive and thinking, oh, nobody's going to change their recommendation based off of this. That's why they exist. Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. I absolutely believe that when there's an incentive one way or the other. And what I've noticed is, there are exceptions to this rule, but Alli and I have definitely experienced, and I would say the majority of RIA owners I've interacted with is once they stop being paid commissions to recommend annuities, how much they recommend them falls off a cliff. I wouldn't say it's go to 0, but significant drop. I used to recommend them to probably 1 out of every 3 clients I met with in broker dealer land. Magically, I left. I can make the same amount for annuity as any other recommendation. I've never recommended one ever. And I've even had the opportunity to 1035 them and keep them under my asset under management umbrella. And it just makes no sense when I could compare it to anything on the market and I don't have an incentive sway. So that's my concern. I think I would agree with Sheryl that annuities are not, objectively good or bad. They're a tool. An annuity literally means a series of payments over time. It's not good, bad, evil, any of that. When I look at the actual products I've encountered in my 15-year career, it just seems insane that anyone would ever get this product that I see a client with, annuity, a variable annuity. I just saw this last week showing a 9% crediting average return over 20 years. when it had actually grown by about 1% per year. There's a whole lot of confusion and deception, how the fees, how the overrides, the caps, all this stuff works, that I just think if the commission wasn't a part of it, I just don't believe many of these folks would ever have landed in this type of product.
There is actually quite a bit of annuities that are sold with no surrender charge and a fee on them. But I guess my biggest concern, Philip, is that you said you've never sold an annuity since you became a fee-only advisor. My question to you is, the number one fear of Americans is running out of money in retirement. So when your clients say, I'm concerned about outliving my income, what is the solution when you are their advisor?
Can I jump in here? Sorry, Phil.
The answer, sure.
Just from the standpoint of I think this is more of an overarching theme and not just the annuity industry or the financial planning industry, but I think it's the finance industry as a whole, and that's fee transparency. And so for me to sit here and think that it's okay to charge someone to manage their investments in this current stage society, I would highly sometimes disagree with that, right? Philip's on the other end of the spectrum, and I think it's also fair. But I think that when we're selling ourselves, we're not selling it like I'm going to pick the best investments. I'm selling myself as a partner, right? You have to make a lot of financial decisions in your life, and there's going to be comfortable ways for people to pay us. And I think we're going to see a lot of that changing. And so when it comes down to annuities, I would think that's one of the hardest problems is, why would I pay for basically a portfolio to be managed in this product when I can create a tax-deferred product without paying fees?
Okay. Well, I would say in response to that, actually, the majority of annuities do not have fees at all in them. So I think that's something that is a fallacy that's perpetuated about these products. I find that in all of the academia and articles that thought leaders in this industry write, which are about why people use annuities, typically it's because somebody's saying, I'm scared about outliving my income, and I have to say, I'm not familiar with your practices, but a bond or a certificate of deposit or, insert product here does not promise a guaranteed paycheck, even if the client lives to be 150 years old. So, this product is about risk mitigation, not necessarily beating out stocks and bonds.
I think I agree with that to a degree. You said the number one fear of folks in retirement is running out of money. I think that makes a lot of sense if the solution we're trying to get to is annuities. The conversation I actually end up having with folks is that their goals are complex. It's not just not run out of money. It's also have flexibility, have freedom, leave a legacy, be thoughtful, have the best types of investments, the most aligned with their goals as possible, with slightly flexible spending should there be bad distribution of stock market returns, and a 4-ish, 5-ish withdrawal rate. Running out of money has just never been a problem. I've been in this industry a while, and just that doesn't happen with folks until they're burning through 10, 15% of their savings a year. Then we get into major problems. But, I think the idea of I want to make sure I don't run out of money is reasonable. And I think if the conversation actually happened in a way that advisors were saying, okay, we can put you in a product like an annuity where you will have guaranteed income to live to 150 when we're cyborgs and our life expectancy is much longer, but you're going to give up a lot. And statistically, you're actually going to get a lot less money out of this than if you had not done it. That is the probable thing. That is the bet that the annuity company is making. And I agree with you, Sheryl. This has actually changed since I was in the industry, that fees reported as fees have reduced on these types of products. But there's still a lot of cost. If we can get hung up on the language, we've got a problem. But there's cost, and the cost is generally cost of return. You're gonna have a lower return in some way, some sort of spread, some sort of cap, some sort of lack of liquidity or flexibility. There's significant costs. These are generally not disclosed because when you're selling a product, you don't say everything wrong with it. That doesn't make any sense. If I'm selling a car, I'm not going to say everything wrong with this car and why I should go get something else. I was going to say what's right with it. I mean, I'm a salesperson. I sell my advice, and I'm going to talk about what's good about it, not what's bad about it. It makes sense. And so there's always a conflict of interest. And I think if someone comes to us, hopefully to be objective advisors, hopefully we can look at all the products without swaying our advice one way or the other based off of our personal comp. I think that's someone thing I don't think should be in the room for these types of conversations. And to Tom's point, if it's not being brought up, it really needs to be. My comp is all over my site. I mean, my fee is the first thing you see. You cannot meet with me seeing a fee. Clients don't know what they're paying in their annuities. That's just kind of normal.
That's not true at all, Philip. Actually, there's a ton of insurance companies that make the client sign paperwork where the agent has put into the paperwork what they are being paid for an annuity sale. And I think I take issue with your statement that consumers don't know about the charges or fees on annuities, because even if there was an agent who was trying not to disclose that, which, by the way, cannot be the case because of the regulation that exists in the annuity industry, there are tons of opportunities for the client to read about those fees or charges, because there is a suitability standard that has to be met in the annuity industry, and that requires that certain things be disclosed. And in fact, there's a minimum font size that they have to be disclosed in the paperwork. So I think that maybe your perception of people hiding fees and charges of annuities is not realistic.
Perhaps. I mean, I guess if I kind of give you benefit of the doubt, what do you think's going on then? That I've talked to so many clients, probably hundreds over the years, who have annuity products, and when I disclose why this is, performing so poorly, why this is so much lower than they thought, explained what happened and what the commission was, 100% of the time they are shocked. I guess I'm getting weird distribution, and my situation is unusual, but that is my experience, and it is certainly the experience of most family planners I talk to. So maybe you're right. Maybe annuity salespeople are disclosing this, and that clients understand it. I would hope so. That hasn't been my experience. And you can sign a contract and not understand what you're signing. I mean, that's not unusual. And these contracts tend to be the most long and complex of any registered product on the market. And I don't think that's by accident. Generally, the more complex a product, the more suspicious you should be of it, is my general belief. And that's not usually for the consumer's best interest to have complexity.
Well, I can't argue with you that there are complex annuities, but in fact, more than 40% of all annuities sold are fixed annuities that earn a stated rate of interest that is guaranteed for a certain number of years. And
That's
I would
true.
say for the person that owns other products, like, for example, certificates of deposit, they would be very familiar with how it works on a traditional fixed annuity. Now, when you're talking variable annuities, I can't argue with you at all. There is a ton of paperwork that is associated with that type of sale. And there is added complexity because it's not just a guaranteed rate, but the characterization of annuities is something that I'm questioning, because your viewpoint is you need to be in products that aren't annuities.
No, not necessarily. To be clear, I don't think that's true.
Your practice.
I don't think you need to be out of annuities. I just haven't ever seen one that was compelling yet. Yeah, I think if there was a strong case for it, it would be to my advantage to use them. I mean, obviously, right? I want the client to be happy. I want good outcomes. I'm going to use the absolute best product in the market. I mean, I would have no advantage to not use them. I'm not going to have some vendetta or something, or I'm going to avoid these on principle. I'm going to use anything I can. And there are fee-only based annuity platforms. I'm familiar with them. I've explored them. So, yeah.
So Philip or Alli, what would be maybe a case design, a client in their 60s, 70s that need a certain amount of income? Why would they not be a good fit for annuity? And what would you offer as an alternative? And I'd love to hear what Sheryl would say that an annuity could meet that or beat that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, like, if someone is coming to us for our advice, they have a standard level of portfolio that I don't really necessarily think that we're often gonna run out of money. I would say, especially in the high net worth world, a lot of what I was doing was unrolling annuities rather than putting people in annuities, because for a lot of my high net worth clients, they started to realize that they wanted to have a lot of freedom with their wealth as it grows. So from a perspective of overall diversified portfolio, say we have someone with $10 million, they want to they want a bond hedge in there, which one person could say, you could use an annuity for a bond hedge, you could use a life insurance policy for a bond hedge, but I'm someone that favors taxes often. So I'm someone that's going to favor more so of a muni bond ladder, right? You're going to get multiple levels of tax breaks there, and you're also going to get certainty in return. While an annuity may outperform a bond ladder, sure, but I don't think at that point in that level of portfolio, we're necessarily chasing return as much as we are chasing tax haven.
Philip and Alli, I wasn't in this business in 2007 when there's like horrible downturn and people lost over 50% in their portfolios and they couldn't recover from that. Have you guys been through that? Were you advisors when you did that? And if you were, or if you had an experience like that, do you think that would change your mind on annuities?
Maybe. I got in right after the major blood had been spilled in that. I think I started my licensing in 2009. But I certainly did see just the catastrophe that did wreak on real people's lives. My grandmother in particular was very much a playing the stocks kind of retiree and had a lot of money in Facebook and these other sorts of kind of new stocks on the market, just got wiped out. I mean, she saw 40-50% devastation on a tech heavy portfolio pre-2008. And it really, did a lot of harm, and stories like that in my mind as I do planning for folks. She was horribly under diversified. A 50% drop would be if a retiree's 100% in equities. And, that's malpractice if you're doing that. So we're not exactly comparing that. But, I think the worst possible time to set up a fixed income stream in the last several decades would be the year 2000. You're going to capture the dot-com bubble burst. Then coming up to now, you're going to capture the subprime crisis, COVID, et cetera. And there's a colleague, I think is actually friends with you, Sheryl, who does this experiment every year where he shows what 4% rate of withdrawal would look like with $1 million starting in the year 2000. Arguably the worst possible time to do it, worse than 2008. And the sequence of returns test. And he publishes it every year, and he just published it. And the amount of money he'd have today, 26 years later, is $1 million. The 4% withdrawal rule, particularly when you add in slightly flexible spending, which most retirees do have some flex about if they're going to take that trip or not, or the gift to grandkids if things go bad, and guardrails, is really pretty manageable. I've helped many, many, many families through retirement of all amounts, not 10 million, like Alli's saying, but 1 million and sometimes even less, and having to be flexible with that. The conversation of, hey, I need a guaranteed amount of income of exactly this much is not a conversation that clients bring up to me. This is generally something I think that is brought up by agents because it ends up resulting in a product sale. But they come to me with much more amorphous emotional things, and safety is one of them, but also flexibility is one of them. And if we kind of have a bit more of a holistic conversation about that, folks are freaked out about giving up flexibility generally. Even CDs, half the time we bring up a CD, they're like, oh, what if I need to get the money? And the penalties on that and the illiquidity is much less intense than an annuity. And I think if that was fully disclosed, many of these sales probably would have resulted in a different product. Again, perhaps that's maybe I have an unusual distribution, as Sheryl's saying, and the disclosure is high. But I'm just sharing my experience that it's generally not disclosed. They are completely clueless about how the person was comped and how this actually works, what the downsides were, I suppose.
Sheryl, can you respond to that? And then Tom, I know you're chomping at the bit to share some stuff too, so we'll open it up for you.
Yeah. So I guess my initial reaction to both Alli and Philip's contributions are, it makes me curious about who your client is. What is the typical age of a client that you're working with? And what is the typical amount of assets that you are managing for that client?
I'll start first just because I made a major shift in my career about 3 years ago. Beginning of my career, I worked with primarily high net worth individuals. I managed an individual book of like 150 million, right? So I was working with a lot of people that had annuities. Those were targeted back 10, 20 years ago. A lot of those people had those really, really high surrender value annuities, right? And that's where we met DPL, right? Because we could 1035 those high surrender charges into something that they're at least saving fees in. And so that's what I used an example from with that $10 million. member. Now where I work is Fruitful, so that is where we work nationwide with a majority of my members are paycheck to paycheck. So a lot of the people are learning how finance works, trying to understand exactly how to make their money last. So I'd say I kind of have both perspectives, luckily, fortunately.
Yeah, I'm only 41, so my clientele probably skews a bit young. We do assets under management currently, but for most of my career, I actually did mostly hourly or project-based planning, where we'd meet somebody one time, we would not gather their assets, and because it's kind of a high volume business, I would meet hundreds of people every year. I did a lot of families, a lot of volume. I'd say skewing 40s, 50s, and the primary annuities I encountered were sold as accumulation tools, index annuities, variable annuities. I may be completely ignorant and naive on the kind of more fixed income space, as a actual real annuity. That is not the majority of my experience, but I have more recently looked at those as folks have existing annuities to potentially 1035 over, and I'm just maybe left unimpressed with those. I don't want to expand too much further than your question. So I'd say probably 40s to 60s. I do have several dozen families in retirement, 80s, 90s currently, but that, just trying to be honest, like probably close to retirement would be my standard client.
And do you have a minimum threshold of assets for the clients that you're working with?
I do today, but we just kind of updated that last year to 500,000. But again, for many years we had a minimum of you book 90 minutes with me at $300 an hour, and so there was people could be all over the place, and I saw all the different things and all kinds of different scenarios. So yeah, not definitely limited. I would say our clientele from AUM and RIA space is like on the low end. Like we don't have the high net worth relatively. I mean, 500,000 is a lot of money, but yeah, we're still, I'd say, relatively low to our peers.
So it may surprise you to hear that the typical annuity purchaser is 63 years old and has $175,000 that they are dealing with as a nest egg. I would compel you, hopefully, to realize that that's a lot different demographic than the people who you're working with. And I can absolutely understand why people who have the level of assets that you discussed maybe don't have the concern of I'm going to run out of money in retirement, and that scares me. So I think that, there's some framing that needs to be done before we make any analysis on that.
I think that's fair. I didn't know that.
I want to push back on that a little bit because that example kind of highly concerned me due to I work now anywhere from someone from 40 to I think my oldest client is 77, right? Actually down to 20 something. But if someone came to me with $145,000, it's really hard for them to possibly keep and save their money. And so it's our job to kind of educate them on what they have. And me locking up their money in a product would be against their best interest entirely because that type of demographic is likely to break the policy and pay the fees to get their money out because they didn't have enough money outside of that policy.
Well, with current regulation, there has to be assets that are held outside of the annuity for liquidity purposes. So today, you're not going to see anyone putting 100% of their money in annuity.
Sorry, I misheard you. That scared me. Okay.
Yeah, that regulation has been in place for quite a long while.
You might be more familiar with that than us, Sheryl. What are those limits? What's the most you can have in something like this?
It's dynamic depending on the client, their experience, their holdings. It's not something where you can say it's X. Every case is different, and the insurance agent who sells the product has to complete a lot of paperwork in order to make a case for the client purchasing an annuity.
Yeah. Well, we can come back to that, but I know, Tom, you travel all over and have a pretty strong case for why you think annuities play a critical role in retirement planning. So as promised, I'm going to give you the floor for this segment, and then we can open it up for what you're saying. And then I would love to be able to come back to this part of the discussion too, because this is good.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to try to tie it all together. Philip talked about probability based. He talked about flexibility, and that's what Dr. Pfau really came up with, this rise of retirement income style awareness. He looked at four things. He said people are either probability based, like Philip, or safety first, like me and Sheryl. Probability based, hey, Love the market. Markets go up and down, but over time they always go up. I'm comfortable with that. Stocks outperform bonds over time. Safety first says, I want some contractual guarantees and risk pooling. I don't want to have all my money at risk. I certainly want to have some money at risk, but I don't want to have it all at risk. Then he looked at optionality versus commitment. The optionality is what Philip talked about. People want flexibility. And the commitment is people like me are willing to take a certain amount of my money and lock that in so I know that I've got guaranteed income, just like a private pension or a social security check coming every month. So it comes down to 4 different quadrants, 4 different styles. So Philip, this is you. This is probability based with optionality, flexibility, and 35% of the retirees agree with you. That's what they want. And they're fine with systematic withdrawals from a diversified portfolio. But if you notice, that's only 35%. If that's going to be your only style, you're going to give up 65% of the market. Because the one is somebody who wants safety first with optionality. And I put Sheryl in this bucket because she wants strong protection. She wants guaranteed income, but she wants to have some flexibility. If she wants to make a withdrawal, if she wants to add money. And this is where fixed indexed annuities come in. This is where RILAs, registered index linked annuities, come in, where you can still have guarantees, but you still have flexibility to make withdrawals. You're not locked into a SPIA or a DIA. The other one is safety first and commitment. I would put me in this one, all right? We want guaranteed lifetime income, and I want to know that it's there, and I want to know that I can count on it. And by the way, I fit into Philip's demographics as far as money. And when Alli said you could use an annuity, but we use bond ladders, I mean, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to optimize their portfolio. No matter how much they have, we should focus on optimizing their portfolio. And I will say you cannot optimize a portfolio without having some guaranteed income. The fourth one is probability based with commitment. And this is probably the rarest, 13%. And I didn't mention 36% of the retirees are like me, 16% of the retirees are more like Sheryl, 13% are probability based with commitment. So they want market-based growth, but they want to have some risk wrap. So that's where a registered index linked annuity would work, or a variable annuity. Now you say, oh, variable annuity, they're the nasty ones. They're the ones with high fees. Look, I've done pretty well in some variable annuities. I put the guarantee that I won't lose money, and you can buy variable annuities that guarantee you will not lose a penny over a 7-year or 10-year period of time. That gives you a floor that can literally be like your bond portfolio. You can invest more aggressively. I've had great success personally with that when I was younger. That was before I was more safety first, when I was more probability first. And Philip, when you get a little more white hair, you're going to turn in a little more like me as well. So why do retirees need guaranteed lifetime income? Well, look, there's a lot of risks. You can live a long time. We could have deflation or depression. The markets can crash. You can take out too much money. The sequence of returns risk. You're going to need long-term care at some point if you live long enough. Inflation. They can change the rules in the middle of the game. They're going to raise your taxes. There's a lot of risks in retirement, but there's only one number one risk. And that number one risk is longevity risk. Why? Because it's not just a risk. It's a risk multiplier of all the other risks. The longer you live, the more likely the market will crash. The longer you live, the more likely you take out too much money. The longer you live, the more likely you need long-term care. The more likely they'll raise your taxes. The more likely you'll see inflation. And so what the PhDs who study retirement, and they're unanimous in this, to retire optimally, you must take that longevity risk off the table. Look, Time Magazine had this cover. The first person lived to 140 is likely alive today. You know, we talk about AI and a lot of things, but what about AI in medicine? Within just a couple of years, you're not going to get an antibiotic. You're going to get the Philip antibiotic. I'm going to get the Tom antibiotic. They're going to have nanobots that are going to go through our body and take out the cancer. They're going to be able to print a kidney. Do you need a left one or a right one, small, medium, or large? All of this stuff is going to allow people to live longer and longer and longer. And the Center for Retirement Research says it is precisely this unpredictability of age of death that makes lifetime income provided by Social Security and annuities so valuable. The variance in longevity is directly linked to the value of annuities because insuring against longevity risk is the very motivation to purchase annuities. So how do you take longevity risk off the table? Stocks can't do it. Bonds can't do it. Real estate can't do it. CDs can't do it. Crypto can't do it. Only some form of an annuity. A lifetime income annuity, a deferred income annuity, a fixed indexed annuity, or a registered index linked annuity, or variable annuity with a lifetime income benefit. Those are the only things that can take that longevity risk off the table. And these are the highest payout rates I have seen in decades. These are current. You can go to immediateannuities.com and check them yourself. But if you got a 75-year-old, I think in one of our earlier discussions on Linked, I said there's 3 reasons why a retiree should have an annuity in their portfolio. Number 1, it will improve portfolio performance. Number 2, you're likely to be happier. And number 3, you're likely to live longer. Now, this shows why it will improve portfolio performance. I mean, if you take life only, you see the numbers. And if you take life with cash refund, that means if a person puts in $100,000, they're paid out $20,000, they die, the family gets the other $80,000. Why would a 75-year-old or 85-year-old be in a bond ladder when they can have guaranteed payouts that approach double digits? And it's not just older people. Look at a 50-year-old. This is what I did when I was in my 50s. I bought products to start when I was 65. Some people buy to start at 75 or 85 as longevity insurance. But these are guaranteed payout rates. A 40-year-old could put in $100,000. They're guaranteed $32,000 a year for the rest of their life. Why wouldn't they want to do a little bit of that just to build that pension type income base? And remember, those are not interest rate, those are payout rates. And there's 3 ingredients to a payout rate. The first ingredient is principal. That's the orange box. Well, anybody can give you principal. The second ingredient is interest or investment gain. That's the gray box. Anybody can give that to you. But the third ingredient is something only a life insurance company can manufacture. It's called mortality credits. And on my slide is longevity credits, the same thing. In paychecks and playchecks, I called it mortality credits. And don't worry, retire happy, I call it longevity credits. It's extra money from the risk pool the older you are and the longer you live. And I like to say that mortality credits are literally a financial miracle, because here's why. The insurance company doesn't know when I'm going to die, and they don't know when you're going to die, but they know how long everyone on this podcast will live, almost to the exact day. And because of that, they can pay each and every one of us as though they knew exactly when we're going to die. See, half the people on this podcast are going to die before the other half. We just don't know who's sitting on which side of the line, but we don't have to. The insurance company sets that high guaranteed payout rate, and everybody will get that highest guaranteed paycheck for the rest of their life, no matter how long they live. Now, what you're looking at there is how it works in a SPIA, a single premium immediate annuity, or a DIA, a deferred income annuity, or if you just annuitize a contract. But what if you use a fixed indexed annuity or a RILA or a VA and take lifetime benefit? Well, client puts in $100,000. They decide to turn on the lifetime income benefit. Well, first the interest comes out. That's taxable. The principal comes out, not taxable unless it's higher 401k over. But even if the account value is 0, the checks don't stop. The checks keep getting paid. Why? Because that's the mortality credits in those products. All income annuities pay mortality credits. Now, this is my favorite part of the presentation because I get to do a practical application. Almost every meeting I do, somebody raises their hand and say, Tom, what do you do when a client says they don't like annuities or they hate annuities? You know what I say? I say, you can't change their mind. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I don't expect to change your mind, Philip. But what I'm going to do is flip through the research that I use to write my books, to do my talks, so that hopefully at some point you can change your own mind. Because I promise you, when you get a little dust on the bottle up here, you're going to be thinking about retirement very differently than you're thinking about at age 41. Now, Dr. David Blanchett, Dr. Michael Finke, 2 of the smartest PhDs. What I tell people here is there are 2 types of people in this world, spenders and savers. Which are you? I'm a saver. My entire career, I've saved 30 to 40% of my income. My wife, she's a spender. She makes sure we don't live in a hut and we have some nice things. But how do you take a saver like me and turn them into a spender? Because retirement's all about spending money. I am 70% retired now. So I'm spending money. We just got back from Panama. We're going on a Caribbean cruise in like 30 days. I play golf 4 to 5 days a week. It's all about spending money. Well, that's what this white paper was. Guaranteed income, a license to spend. Retirees like me who are behaviorally resistant to spending down savings may better achieve their lifestyle goals by increasing the share of their wealth allocated to annuitized income. Essentially, annuities give retirees a psychological license to spend their savings in retirement. Surveys reveal a clear preference among retirees to live off income, and many don't feel comfortable spending down assets to fund a lifestyle. If you just gave some of your clients some paychecks and playchecks, guess what? They could go out and spend their money and they can enjoy it. Too many clients are not spending their money. They're holding on to it. They're living what I call a just-in-case retirement, which I'll cover in just a minute. Here's the Milliken Institute. Retirees that annuitize income spend twice as much as retirees with an equal amount of non-annuitized income. Among retirement age workers, 70% indicated that a guaranteed lifetime income option would help them feel more confident in retirement. Dr. Michael Finke, Dr. Wade Pfau, if the reason you save for retirement is to provide a secure lifestyle, there's no more efficient way to create lifetime income than through an annuity. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the two smartest PhDs who study retirement. Purchasing an income annuity with a portion, and that's all we ever say, a portion of retirement savings can provide a higher potential for success, greater legacy wealth over the long term, and increased risk capacity. What does that mean? That means if you've got a guaranteed income floor, you can actually invest more aggressively. You know, I tell this story. I about 4 years ago, I did a positive post on Bitcoin, and I was just attacked. Oh, Tom, you've been hacked. You're the safe money guy. You never talk about Bitcoin. And all I say is I was the biggest Bitcoin non-believer in the history of the world. I mean, it's a nothing burger, right? It's the greater fool theory. You got to find somebody stupider than you to buy it. That's what I thought. And then I watched, maybe it was Michael Saylor on TV, who made a totally believable case to a 100% non-believer like me that Bitcoin could hit $1 million of Bitcoin. He said, look, all we're recommending is that our wealthy people put 1% of their portfolio in Bitcoin. Because if it goes to zero, won't hurt you. If it goes to $1 million, you're going to be happy you did it. That resonated with me. So I put 1% of my portfolio back when it was $2,000 of Bitcoin. And earlier this year, it hit 125. Now it's at 60 something. I don't care. It's a 30 bagger, a 60 bagger. It's a big bagger. And then when I got up there, what I did was I bought a put. I bought a put on Bitcoin. So now as it falls, that's going back up. But my point is I could do that because I've got guaranteed income. And the research shows that a retirement portfolio should have 20 to 40% of that portfolio in an income annuity. Income annuities are less expensive and safer for risk-averse retirees whose primary goal is income security in retirement. I don't know if you heard what Sheryl said, but most annuities are not even fee products. A single premium immediate annuity is not a fee product. You can't find a fee in the product. A deferred income annuity is not a fee product. A fixed annuity is not a fee product. A multi-year guarantee annuity, a MIGA, not a fee product. A base fixed index annuity, not a fee product. There's only two types of annuities that even have fees. Variable annuities have fees, and some optional riders have fees, okay? But why does a variable annuity have fees? Because they can guarantee you're not going to lose money in the stock market. That's not cheap to do, all right? BlackRock sells no annuities. This is not their marketing organization, Phil. This is their research, okay? They got $13 trillion in the stock market. They got more money in the market than Fidelity, more money in the market than Vanguard. But here's what they say. Adding guaranteed lifetime income combined with a more aggressive asset allocation generates 29% more annual spending ability from one's savings and reduces downside risk by 33%. On top of that, delaying retirement and claiming Social Security benefit from 65 to 67 boosts total annual spending another 16% and reduces downside risk by an additional 15%. Goldman Sachs sells no annuities, but they say insurance-based solutions such as annuities provide guaranteed income and offer deliver relatively higher payout rates than typical systematic withdrawal strategies. Dr. Michael Finke, Dr. Wade Pfau, annuities allow a retiree to spend at a level that would otherwise require a high risk of failure if funded solely from an investment portfolio. When I showed you those 9% and 16% payout rates, you could never take out 9% out of an investment portfolio, but the annuity can give that type of cash flow to a retiree. Income annuities provide confidence, the freedom to spend and invest, as well as the opportunity to leave a legacy. Certainty provides confidence. This is one of the reasons that retirees who've incorporated income annuities in their retirement plan report higher levels of satisfaction. The Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, annuities, by pooling longevity risk and generating mortality credits, allow a higher level of income and insurance against premature exhaustion of assets than other drawdown strategies. BlackRock here says a case for fixed indexed annuities and accumulation. It's not just for income. They're great for accumulation, where they give some of the upside of the market with no downside risk, and that's contractually guaranteed. And if I had one slide that I would show you, it would be this one. From the Center for Retirement Research, Boston College, lifetime income products are a cornerstone of retirement planning. I believe that down to my soul. U.S. News and World Report, you buy an annuity because it does what no other investment can do. Provide guaranteed lifetime income for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. Dr. Roger Ibbotson did an entire white paper where he compared fixed index annuities to bonds. You know what he found? Fixed index annuities have outperformed bonds for the last 40 years and are likely to do so for the next 40 years. So, Phil, you don't have to touch your stock portfolio. Move some of the bond portfolio into the income annuity. Your portfolios will do better. Your clients will be happier, and they'll likely live longer. Barclays sells no annuities, but they say fixed index annuities outperform bonds. The Wall Street Journal, the case for replacing some bonds with annuities. Tommy's not making this stuff up. Ernst & Young, they sell no annuities. They're an accounting firm. They're one of the top accounting firms in the world. And they did a whole white paper and they put AI on it. And they said, build me the perfect retirement portfolio. You know what it looked like? 30% whole life insurance. I'm not making this up. 30% income annuity, 40% investments. And if you looked at my personal portfolio, it'd be almost on that, almost to the number. Now, do you want your clients to be happy in retirement? Well, the Wall Street Journal said the secret to a happier retirement is friends, neighbors, and a fixed annuity. They studied who are the happiest people in retirement. Do you know what they found? People surrounded by their friends, surrounded by their families, who had guaranteed paychecks every single month. Think of your retired clients, retired military, retired government, retired teacher, retired nurses, retired professors. They have pensions, and pensions are nothing more than lifetime income annuities, guaranteed paychecks for life. Time magazine found the same thing in Great Britain. Lifetime income stream key to retirement happiness. A new study in the land of grumps reveals that retirees with a guaranteed lifetime income stream can find true happiness. The American College, how annuities can increase happiness in retirement. When clients know how much income they will receive every month for life, they know what kind of housing and activities they can afford, allowing them to choose the lifestyle that makes them the happiest. What about living longer? Well, you know what? Freakonomics had a University of Chicago study, and the University of Chicago studied people who bought lifetime income annuities versus people who didn't. You know what they found? The people that bought the income annuities lived longer than the people that didn't. Here's what the research shows. Research shows that people who buy annuities tend to live longer, and not just because of the kind of people with the money to buy annuities to start with. It's apparently that little extra incentive of the annuity payout that keeps people going. The best article I've ever read on the subject was published a couple years ago in the Journal for Financial Service Professionals. It was written by attorney Patrick Tricker. Annuities and moral hazard. Can longevity insurance increase longevity? Here's what he found. In the United States, a 65-year-old male who purchases a life annuity can expect to live about 20% longer than a 65-year-old male who does not. And the whole rest of the article explained why people of guaranteed income tend to live longer. They don't have stress. They don't worry. And because they're being paid to live, guess what? Many of them choose to live differently. They watch what they eat. They exercise. They call the doctor and not feeling well. And all those little things cause them to live longer. Now, I told you this was new research. There's nothing new about this. Annuities have been around for 2,000 years. The Roman Empire issued income annuities because running out of money is not a new concern. Running out of money has been the number one concern since there's been people and money. But many people had to read a book called Sense and Sensibilities, written by Jane Austen back in 1811. Here's what she wrote back in 1811 about annuities. If you observe, people always live forever when there's an annuity to be paid to them. The annuity is a very serious business. It comes over and over every year, and there is no getting rid of it. She wrote that in 1811. As I said, too many retirees are living this just-in-case retirement. When I was an advisor, I'd say, wait a minute now. You told me when you're retired, you're going to join the country club. You're going to buy a new boat. You're going to see the world. Have you done that yet? Oh, no, the markets could crash. You know, the country's so divided. There's political divisions. And so they don't touch their money. They don't touch their money. They don't touch their money. Then they die. What happens? Money goes to kids. What do the kids do? Oh, they join the country club. They buy a new boat and they go see the world. I tell people, I want you to join the country club. I want you to see the world. I do not want you to live a just-in-case retirement. And economic theory predicts that a retiree with a similar annuitized wealth will spend more than a retiree with an equal amount of non-annuitized savings. A rational, risk-averse retiree who does not transfer longevity risk will spend less each year than if they had purchased a fairly priced income annuity. That's what I got. I'll stop sharing. I'll shut up.
Tom, thanks. That was a lot. I don't think that we'll get to be able to address all of that in the rest of the discussion. But Alli, Sheryl, Philip, thoughts, discussions? What do you like about that? Disagree? What?
I read all of the research that Tom brought up in his presentation, and that's why I'm so passionate about educating people about annuities, because it seems like there's a lot of people that don't know about them. and are not able to make an assessment of whether or not they're right for them. But all of the research points to the use of annuities when appropriate.
Just replace the bonds. That's what I would say. Just replace the bonds and you'll be cooking with gas.
My first thought is I was absolutely not expecting Jane Austen to make an appearance on this podcast, for which I thank you, Tom. Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of information. a couple, I guess, little things I'll snag out of there is that, I think there's essentially research to reach any conclusion you want to. That cigarettes are good for you, that Bitcoin's going to $1 million. I mean, it doesn't really matter. A lot of the white papers that Tom was referencing, I don't know if the average listener knows this, but a white paper is a marketing paper. It's under the marketing department. And he did point out that BlackRock doesn't sell annuities, Ernst & Young doesn't sell annuities. That is true. But that doesn't mean they don't have a vested interest in annuity sales. For example, BlackRock manages the bond risk of annuity companies. It's in their best interest to promote and the success of these type of companies. So I would say, because the science and research says so, I think isn't nothing. I think I'm a big fan of science and research, and I've read it, and there's plenty of strong arguments on the other side, which were not included in that slide deck. But I think that the point is, you kind of boil it down. When you're a hammer, everything's a nail. When you're a salesperson of a certain product, or you sell sales training, then there's a million good reasons to sell it. And I don't fault anyone for being a salesperson. I don't think recommending annuities because that's your job is a bad thing. But I think if you're hired to be an impartial advisor and planner that is going to look at all of the products, whether it's Bitcoin, as Tom brought in the conversation, or annuities, or index funds, or cash in a whole, that you should be able to be as impartial as possible. And, I think there's a lot of very compelling stuff in what Tom said, but ultimately his job is to make a case for this product. And I don't have a case for or against any particular product other than.
But Phil, you do have a bias because you haven't written annuities. You haven't written annuities.
But I could. I make no more money. See, the thing is, I make no more or less. I could have every client I have in annuities, and my comp would be identical.
And all the research shows that these clients should have some guaranteed lifetime income, at least a portion, 20 to 40%. If you say, I'm not doing any for anybody, then that's a bias. Come on.
I would like to step in here from like a generational hedge, because I do think this is a large part of the conversation as well, because you can say over the past 10 years, we've seen more products adapt than ever. It was consistent to see a pretty stagnant portfolio, but now other people have options to alternatives. You're now going to give people access to venture capital. You're now looking at building portfolios in a very, very different way. And going back to kind of like the basis of what I do is education, right? And so my job is to hopefully, if I'm not working with someone in their 60s, hopefully making sure that by the time they are 60, they're not fearful and in the need of an annuity product. And so when I think, okay, yes, maybe annuities were the cornerstone of retirement, I can completely agree. My whole firm that I started at was built on annuities. But as products adapt and we have these different features we can use in different types of products, it starts to kind of like pull away from why that would be a good choice. That makes sense.
I don't know what to say. Either you believe in math and science or you don't. I do. And so I'll just rest my case. I rest my case.
I'm a big fan of both math and science, so we're on the same page.
Actuaries design the products for life and annuity, and they have to study math and science to become actuaries. So these products are based on.
I'd love to talk about actuaries for a moment. Actually, you spoke about mortality credits and so forth. So, you are right. Actuaries are wizards at knowing exactly when, someone's going to die on average. They're very, very good at this math, and they bake it in. And they're not doing you any favors. And I think, framing it as magic, I think makes sense if you're trying to sell the product. But what's actually happening is risk pooling. And most people in a risk pooled product are going to do worse than if they had not done it, whether it's term insurance, auto insurance. The vast majority will be worse off. And a few people will win the lotto by being the lucky ones. And I think if you explain that to folks, if there is a overwhelmingly high probability you will have a lower net worth by this product, but a small probability you will make more money. I think that's a more fair, even-handed, and both sides approach to explaining mortality credits. Well, then let the person decide. And I have done that. I mean, I've had folks in annuities that could just 1035 to another annuity. I gain nothing. It would be easy to do it. And when I explain both sides, not only that, but also the surrender charges, the complexity, and other sorts of downsides, they usually like, oh no, I don't want this. I'm not selling them away from that. I'm just trying to explain both sides of it. So yeah, you're right. The actuarial part of it is important, and there is math involved. The math says you're going to probably lose, just like going into Vegas. Sometimes people win, but you usually don't and don't plan on it. And I think that's important to explain in the actuarial math.
Well, you're framing this as if everybody is concerned about making the highest return possible. Annuities are not for getting the most interest or gains. Annuities allow the client to have an insurance product that can guarantee them a paycheck, period. And I'm confused,
Totally agree.
Philip, because
Totally agree.
earlier you said you've never had a client where you could make a case for annuities, but you just said to us that you did have clients who did that. So
I think
Right.
I think the issue here is financial planning is incredibly dynamic. Any person that I meet, right, I say financial planning is completely customizable. I need to understand who you are, where you're trying to go, your biggest fears, your biggest traumas. Let's go there, because we need to be able to find the proper assessment of where you are and what you're looking for. And I think that's where sometimes you're right. There is a case where an annuity could make sense. But for a lot of people, one of my biggest hangups in it is the fact that there's no accessibility to it. It lacks freedom. It lacks the ability to use it however you want. And so that, to me, as much as I understand, I will be in a situation where an annuity could make sense. I just like flexibility myself. That locking up income is not something that's favorable to me.
well, unfortunately, that's not the reality when it comes to annuities. Most every annuity allows the client to take 10% of their money out each year without being subject to surrender penalties. They allow the client to have access to their money in the event of nursing home confinement, terminal illness, loss of employment. There are lots of triggers where a client can access their money through an annuity. And that doesn't even include the ability to turn on their paycheck for life. So I hear you, and I definitely understand what you're saying, but we need to not lose sight of the fact that these products do give the client access to their money, and they're not putting all of their money in an annuity anyway. They're having to put money elsewhere to access in the event of an emergency cash need.
I think I still generally would see what Alli's saying, and that, having lack of access to 90% of your money is still a concern. But, I think we're in a bit of a problem of trying to have it both ways, is what I hear. That, Sheryl, you're saying this is not designed for maximum returns. This is, you messaged me earlier, this is not an investment. This is insurance, which is true. Regulatorily, most annuities are not investments. And yet, in Tom's presentation, it was very much treated as an interchangeable with an investment, bonds. And we kind of have to pick. And it's like, once we try to critique it as an investment, well, this investment has bad performance, and shifting the conversation to, it's not actually an investment. We're not actually trying to get performance. It's a kind of a moving target where what actually is this? And I think, I would love annuities to be better. I would love to have this be a tool I use with my clients. I think the insurance industry in general has an incredibly low public opinion and is treated as shifty and shady, not just life and health, but all of it. And I think there's a trust issue, and clients are naturally suspicious. And so I think that trust, could be repaired and grow, but we got to disclose. I think there's got to just be a lot more transparency, and all the conversations I hear around annuities on LinkedIn are generally just aggressively avoiding the kind of not so pretty or challenging parts of annuities. And I think one important thing that Alli said earlier is we're planners. I'm a financial planner. I'm not an annuity salesperson. I don't work for a broker dealer. I'm not a product salesperson. My job is not to move any product. My job is to help plan. I look at the plan and help to plan. And we're coming at it from a different perspective than, an insurance provider or somebody that sells training for annuity sales. It's just a different approach.
So let me ask you a question. How do you hedge long-term care risk? How many long-term care policies or life policies with long-term care riders have you written? That should be every one of your retired clients. You got to have that conversation and set up some type of plan, right?
Right. I mean, it's one, self-insure, right? But I don't think we're talking about that type of demographic. Two, if we're talking about people that are worried about longevity risk, that's where I would probably think about their cash position a little bit more importantly. So a lot of people, I would hold anywhere from 2 to 3 years of cash once they retired. So if the market was down, we could do the fixed income we set for life for you that we send to your account every single month, like an annuity. We continue to do that for them when the market is down.
Out of their own money, though. You're self-insuring, so they have the risk.
Right.
That's how you handle long-term care. You transfer the risk back to the person. Okay.
I'll answer your question too, Tom. I mean, we're departing a little bit from annuities. We're talking about long-term care, but I'm a CFP and we have to learn about all this stuff. So happy to. I talk about long-term care with every single one of my clients who's near in retirement. They care about it. They're worried about it. It's a real risk. I have found that long-term care insurance on its own, separate from any sort of rider attached to life insurance or whatever, always overpromises and underdelivers is what I've experienced. Is that it sounds really good. That's usually quite expensive. And the ability to actually get benefits from this is like blood from a stone. My personal experience is my mother-in-law met 3 of the, I think it's 5 or 7 activities of daily living to be able to qualify for long-term care insurance. She had a policy she'd paid into for 30 years, went into the facility, and then they decided she actually did not qualify actually because they saw her move from the couch to the table or something and clawed back all the benefits. And this sort of horror story I see over and over and over. So I'm like, okay, we know it's going to be hard to get money out of these companies. If you're well enough positioned that you can actually retire and work with someone like me, and I understand that's a privileged demographic, but if you're, in the 2 to 3 million, that self-insuring is not actually that challenging to manage. I've had lots of clients go into long-term care, manage that cost. That is absolutely something we can plan for, and I have managed. So I think usually folks actually ask me about long-term care, and I say, insurance, should I buy it? And I say, well, here's about what's going to cost, just so you know. Here's what you could potentially get. Here's what it'll look like to self-insure. You make a decision. I don't care. It doesn't affect my bottom line whatsoever. And they almost exclusively choose to self-insure. Now, right decision, wrong decision, I don't know. But again, it's a bit of a problem with insurance is something I think that should be disclosed by someone who's not selling insurance, which is me.
Right. I don't think anybody's going to change anybody's mind here. I don't agree at all with what Philip and Alli say. I don't agree one bit. And I guess they don't agree with me, but I'll take mine to the bank. And I own 13 annuities. I have a unlimited benefits long-term care plan. I just finished a 12-pay whole life at $226,000 a year. I believe in this stuff, and it's done very well for me, and I'm living the dream right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read research that shows, and not white papers, actual research that shows that the vast majority of people who own annuities are happy with their purchase. But that is contrary to Alli and Philip's experience. And I just have to say, after the call today, I believe that you are biased. You're biased against insurance as a whole, Philip, it sounds like, because of a personal experience. But this is an issue that there's too great of a divide on between Alli and Philip and Tom and myself. So I'm just going to say I appreciate your time and your willingness to listen. And truthfully, a lot of people hear the word annuity and they go, nope, I don't want that. I don't want that. That's high cost, high commission. There's a bunch of things that aren't true about these annuities that they think because they hear it from people like yourself or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times who have mutual fund advertisers. And when you describe what the annuity does, the consumer is instantly attracted to that story and wants to know more. So I'm going to chalk it up to, having differences that we can't get past and say, I appreciate your perspectives and the opportunity to talk it out today.
Yeah. And I would just like to say, I think this all really does come down to all of us having the client's best interest in mind, right? If someone comes to you with a psychology that they are incredibly fearful and that is something that's going to keep them up at night, I'm not going to argue back to them that annuity is a bad decision. I think a lot of it is just like, I don't often get approached with anybody interested in it more so in this modern day world. So I would just say annuities should just do a rebranding, like just call it insurance, because I think if you call it insurance, there's people that'll insure their retirement. But if you sell it, which it has been in my career, as an investment hedge or an investment opportunity or a tax haven in some capacity, that's where you'll lose a lot of us, because there's so many products that are better. There's so many investments that are better. So for me, I would just say, like, there's no hard feelings. It's just I can't figure out where it fits in this modern day world. And I hope that there's a place for it in the future.
Replace their bonds with an income annuity. The portfolio will perform better. They'll be happier. They'll live longer. You'll be happier too. And you got to get more gray hair. I get it. It's a generational thing.
There's some.
But thanks, Justin, for hosting today.
Thank you both for taking time. I appreciate it was respectful. And I'm hoping that conversations like this can increase transparency and increase, just client outcomes, getting rid of a little bit of the fog around annuity conversations.
And talk to the CFP board, because they write our education. So that would help, right? Because I think a lot of us, that's barely on education. I think there's a lot of things there that could help.
Thank you guys, all of you, Philip, Alli, Sheryl, Tom, for the thoughtful and meaningful discussion. It was passionate. I loved it. For the advisors listening, please keep doing the work. Please keep asking better questions. Keep serving your clients well. This is Beyond the IMO. Thank you.